Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Business Cybersecurity Threat Landscape and Strategies for Defense webinar. It's great to see all of you here today, and just a few housekeeping notes. Please keep your phone on silent. You will be on mute, and if you have any questions, please type them in the chat, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. You can put it in the Q&A. This webinar will be recorded, and we will send you the recording after the presentation is done. Over to you, Philip.
Hey, Maman, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the webinar. As Maman stated, we're here, there's about 40 plus of us online, and we're really looking forward to an exciting hour together. So let's get started. Plurilock, presenting the webinar today, is a publicly traded company, so please indulge me with the legalese. We have to keep our legal team employed, so here goes. This is a presentation that's not to be construed as a public offering. This is for informational purposes only, not intended as investment or financial advice in any way. As mentioned earlier, this is recorded, so if you want to catch up on the details of the fine print, you can look at this later while we move on. Today's timeline, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to do a quick introduction. There's going to be introductory comments. We're then going to talk about the lay of the land, how cybersecurity looks today. Most importantly, what you need to know. What is it that you need to do? And we're going to wrap this up with a very interesting AI-laden demo. In the meantime, please make sure that your questions come in so the panelists can address them at the end. So do make sure that Q&A is ongoing. So we've got a great lineup today. In order of appearance, it's going to be Ian Paterson, CEO of Plurilock. Welcome, Ian. Ian has at least 3 international M&A transactions to his credit, 3 digital identity and data analytic patents, has successfully grown and listed Plurilock on the Toronto Stock Venture Exchange. He will be followed today by Mario Montagliani, Vice President of Risk Management at Access. Mario is at the forefront of everything that we're going to talk to you today. Mario, many of your colleagues are on here, a lot of clients as well. And so we're looking for this to be a fruitful experience. Mario helps his clients to take control of managing their risk and their insurance, and look at today's event as one more step in that direction. Steve Stasiukonis, President of Secure Networks, probably leads the most exciting life of all of us. I'm hoping Steve gets to talk a little bit about, putting people in little boxes with oxygen masks and sending them with FedEx labels, trying to break into Knox. This is what testing cybersecurity infrastructure is all about. Paul Baker, who's going to do the actual demo for us today, has 30 years in business, is director of sales at Plurilock, and he's in the front line in terms of educating people, understanding our customer challenges, and generally trying to solve them with new approaches, tools, and systems. And ladies and gentlemen, last and least in order of appearance, I'll be moderating this panel today and moving this along. So here goes. It's 12:05, and Ian, over to you, please.
Right on the money. There we go. Well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. It's good to see. We've got a really good turnout. It's always a pleasure to see my friend Mario. So thank you for this opportunity. I'll talk a little bit about Plurilock just as an overall company, just to give you some introduction. Although Paul and Philip will be talking in a little bit more detail. So Plurilock today, we are at the intersection of cybersecurity and AI. There's 2 parts to our business. We work with mid-market and enterprise organizations, including both commercial as well as public sector, to help with IT and cybersecurity challenges. We also have our own Plurilock AI product, where we're able to recognize who you are based on your keystrokes and mouse movement behavior, We use that as a form of authentication, and Paul will show you some of that in detail. I think to sort of set the stage, I'm going to offer two narratives, two stories of recent calls that I've actually fielded just in the last couple of weeks. Because I think what I'm always surprised by when I'm talking to either law enforcement professionals, insurance professionals, or folks in the media is how often cyber attacks actually occur, and yet none of those stakeholders actually hear about it. So I'll give you two examples. The first example, I was called, I think it was 3 or 4 weekends ago, by an associate, and she said, Ian, this was on a Saturday. She said, Ian, can you help? Because my grandfather, something nefarious has occurred. And so when I got some details of the situation, it turned out that it was an elderly gentleman based in Toronto. He'd received a phone call from somebody who sounded like it was his grandson. Used the right name, said, hey, I've been in a car crash. I need $3,000. Please don't tell mom. I don't want her to worry. Can you get the money together? And being a doting grandfather, of course, he went down to the bank, got $3,000 of cash, and somebody actually came and picked it up. So they actually physically came in to pick up the cash. Obviously, when this was all happening, the people around the grandfather was saying, I don't know about this. This sounds awfully suspicious. But they weren't able to convince him to maybe just take a breath and say, well, hey, hang on, wait a minute, let's investigate this. Of course, we all know how the story ends. The $3,000 was picked up, never to be heard from again. Now, thankfully, I mean, the good news in all this is that the grandson was not in a car crash, so there was no harm to body. But this sort of thing happens all the time. I'll give you, so that's on the personal side. On the business side, I'll give you another data point. This one, again, a couple of weeks ago, a colleague who just took over as general counsel to a new high growth company. Company was a couple thousand employees in size, and I guess when you're the general counsel, part of your remit is to figure out in the first 90 days, what are all the skeletons in the closet that I need to go find that my predecessor might have left me? And one of the things that they discovered was that last fall, somebody in the finance team had received an email, and the email said, this is from one of their just regular matter of course vendors, said, hey, we're just changing banks. Please change my banking wire routing details. Of course, again, we all know where this story goes. So 6 weeks go by, and there was $300,000 wired every week. And so that's $1.8 million that was wired. They were not able to recover the money. It was only on week 6, actually, that they pulled back the last one. So of the 1.8 wired, they were able to recover 300,000. The interesting thing about both of these stories is that in both cases, there was no reach out to law enforcement. There was no reach out to the insurance providers. In the grandfather's case, he actually had a lot of insurance because he was a high net worth individual. He had a lot of service providers in his orbit, in his ecosystem, that he could have turned to. In the business case, they did not reach out to law enforcement. They did not reach out to insurance. They actually, I'm not even sure if they informed their board necessarily about this issue. So in a lot of cases, these cyber events that occur, or these incidents, are seen as embarrassing. They're not talked about as much. And the important thing for everybody on this call to take away is that these attacks happen all the time. We're not necessarily going to hear about them because they are embarrassing. They're seen as something that we don't want to talk about necessarily. But those of us in the cyber industry, specifically those of us who get these phone calls, do recognize that these attacks are extremely prevalent. They're hitting companies of all size. It actually doesn't matter if you're a small company with seemingly an unimportant business. The bad guys don't care. They all of these all businesses are a potential financial gain for the bad guys to hit. And so we have to be vigilant. So that's the backstory. That's what's happening on the ground right now. And the good news is that even though these occurrences are taking place, there are things that we can do collectively to keep our businesses and our families and broader communities safe. So I just want to say thanks again, and back to you, Philip, to carry on the conversation.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for setting the tone for the conversation. With that, over to you, Mario Montagliani.
Thank you, Philip and Ian. Always a pleasure to see you as well. First of all, thanks for reaching out to put this together. It's nothing, it's always something that's top of mind for all of us, personally, corporately, definitely in terms of the what we do for a living here is provide risk solutions for our clients. So it's very timely, and very happy you guys put this together for us. And we have a lot of people on here, so thanks for that very much. Always want to help a client out to promote major issues like this, and your product is incredible, actually, from what I heard. So I just wanted to you struck a chord with me, and when you talked about the grandma that got duped. That actually happened to my mother-in-law 3 months ago. $10,000, and the parent grandson that was calling was apparently my son, who was sitting at work, and she found out after that she just lost $10,000. They actually showed up to the house. Very, 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 obviously my wife wasn't happy about it. So, the point is, it strikes all of us, whether individually or corporately, and it's become such an issue that, we have to educate ourselves. So, and this is a huge step to doing that. So, cyber criminal seems to be a step ahead of us all the time. They're always, this threat we just talked about with the grandma thing individually, seems to be happening in the last 6 months apparently, and it's going everywhere. So we always have to respond to something different, and it seems we're always playing catch up. Insurance companies, at the end of the day, just like us, learning as well about the threats, and they seem to be a little bit behind too, because they're always finding out new things, and at times they will alter some of their coverage. One quick example is cybercrime, which is part of your insurance policy. They're limiting those coverages, which is the social engineering aspect of the coverage. They're limiting that because that's where all the claims are coming in. So as they learn, they respond to their coverages, whether it's pricing or deductibles or not even offering some of the coverage. So so what's happened since then is our clients are increasingly asked to do more things, not just to actually get the insurance, regardless of do this and you'll pay a better premium or deductible will go aside. It's actually just qualifying it. So MFA, VPN, these are kind of acronyms that we hear a lot of. Open portal, targets. So these are things that we commonly see when we get underwriters asking us for clients to do something more in order to get in compliance, to get a good policy. So back, I'd say probably 5 years ago, to ask for $1 million limit was really easy. It's pretty inexpensive. You get really good coverage, and it was like, wasn't hard to get. Now, depending on the industry you're in, obviously, legal is getting hit hard. Medical, financial industries, probably the 3 top biggest industries that are hit. Your data will probably support that. For us, we need to, as risk advisors, really want to understand as much of this as possible, so we can probably advise our clients on what the insurance companies are asking for. So as my last point there, the more we understand, the more we learn, the better we can actually protect ourselves, whether you're an insurance broker personally, corporately, to protect your employees. This is one of the many steps that we need to take. So thank you for doing this, and I'll turn it back to Philip to get into the meat of the presentation. Thanks, guys.
Mario, well defined, and again, the bullets are here. It'll be in the recording. Internally at Plurilock, we're about 100 employees. Cumulatively, we've been doing this for 30 years, and Ian has one rule. You want to hear what it is, Mario? $1 in the jar, everyone, every time someone uses a 3-letter acronym and doesn't explain it. So MFA, multi-factor authentication, and VPN, or virtual private networks, right? So this is for the people who we're trying not to inundate with the acronyms, but thank you again, well stated. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move into the heart of the presentation. We're going to talk about where we are today. And so here's what's happening. we moved post-COVID into work from home, and now I'm going to say it, Mario, WFA, or work from anywhere. And the trend is that there's a 22% year-over-year growth on average. There's 8 to 13 devices per person. The Souza household bucks this trend with probably about 22 IPs per person, but that's everything from the water heater to the Ring camera and everything else that we're bringing in and ultimately connecting to networks. Cybersecurity spend is trending from 188 billion to 230 billion. So lots of money coming into this industry. Small businesses are looking at something like 30% additional cybersecurity spend. In addition to this, while we were doing the trial runs, Mario raised his eyebrows on this point. Yes, there are 3.5 million vacancies globally in the cybersecurity space. So we cannot hire fast enough. And ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the reasons why we do this. We want to be ambassadors for our trade. We want to encourage people to join us. And there's a lot of jobs to be had in this space. And then last but not least, here's an important statistic. 99% of the attack vectors, the reasons why we're being attacked, or the purpose or the medium, has already been known for a year. So this is not something that someone invented brand new a day before and attacked us. Yes, that happens. But for a majority of cases, these are known areas. And we see this constantly in our trade, that it's going back to the basics, and we hope to be able to give you these tools and this knowledge to take away back to your teams, your people, your families, in terms of the basics of cybersecurity, is to be aware. Moving on here, a FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This is a term that's often used by us, and you'll hear it. And the reason for the stories that you heard from Ian and from Mario is not to create this fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because there is already plenty of that, but rather look for a mindset with the people, with your colleagues, to go to facts. And this is why we tell these stories. This is why we break down and make these analyses. We want unified behavior. This is probably the most important tenet today. While we think security in our heads, it's how we act that we're able to protect our organizations. And to all the Access colleagues on the call today, to all the customers on the call today, this is what you've got to take as managers, down to your teams, to your organizations, that not only should we be thinking cybersecurity, we should be behaving and acting cybersecurity. And last but not least, let's talk about facts. Let's talk about what happened. Let's talk about an accurate plan to break it down. So to take FUD as fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and to move it to facts, unified behavior, and to be definite about it. Here's a quick lay of the land. This is not a comprehensive list. This is what we're seeing in terms of what's out there. And before I talk about that, Melvin, I believe we have a poll on what does the landscape look like today? So ladies and gentlemen, if you can please answer that poll. So the question really is, in your organizations, how mature do you believe your cybersecurity posture is? Do you feel, that there's, you're at the low end of this, you're average, the numbers here are mere suggestions, or do you think you're above average? You think that, look, you're being proactive in cybersecurity? So we'll give it a couple of minutes. The poll is going to be on there on your screen, so please answer them. And I'm going to talk to the slide that we have at the moment in terms of what the various forms of cybersecurity are, and we'll give you about 3 minutes to answer this poll. So we're seeing a lot of things out there in terms of malware and phishing and exploits and SQL injections. A SQL injection, basically, just to give you the extent of cybersecurity areas that we've got to address. every website usually has a contact us form, and where you put in your name and your address and you say, hey, contact me, I want to buy your bright and shiny stuff. Hackers are known to put in malicious code through those forms in the hope that it'll ultimately find its way into your organizations and be able to compromise your security. So that's the extent of SQL injections and what they actually do. So Melvin, let's close that poll out. Do we have some results to share? Awesome. So a majority of us believe we're right in the middle. There's about 20% of us who believe that there's work to be done. And congratulations to the 22% of you that believe you are above average. Let's do another quick one, Melvin, in terms of various attacks that we're seeing out there today. Why are you here today, ladies and gentlemen? So that's our second poll. What are you hearing, right? I mean, what's top of mind for you? Is it data breaches? Is it ransomware, which is also a big one? And then GRC is governance, regulation, and compliance. What am I supposed to be doing? What are the laws out there? This is a big one. This is, look, what do I not know that I've got to comply? Is, some guy with a badge going to knock on my door and say, hey, look, your business is out of compliance. We're going to cover a few of those today, but we'd like to know from you as to why you're here. What's your biggest concern? In the interest of time, we've put all other concerns in other, because there'll be too much to list. So we'd like to see, what the top 2 or 3 are, please.
Philip, I can share the results right now.
Okay, please.
There you go.
Awesome. And I have to congratulate you. You guys are probably the fastest poll takers we've ever seen. So, okay, surprisingly, only 12% of you are here to get your answers to ransomware. Very interestingly, governance, regulation, and compliance. So, God bless the bureaucrats. Okay, that's good to know. Data breaches 38% and a very small 8% for other. Thank you very much for responding to that. We'll have a few more polls coming up during the session. And to move on with the conversation before I hand it off to Steve. So basic tenets, right? And this is a great question. What is at the heart of cybersecurity? There's so many things to worry about. And if you're going to take one thing back to your IT guys or to talk to the people in your leadership teams, it's having the right data at the right time, at the right place with the right person. So in this case, if it's payroll data or financial data, and someone's going to look at it at 3 in the afternoon on a regular workday at your office, and the person looking at it is your CFO, all is well. However, if that same data is being looked at midnight by the janitor in the company parking lot, we've got a problem. And I would take this back as one of the basic tenets or the golden rules, so to speak. In addition to that, understand that security is never perfect. It's definitely not good enough. We live in a world where security is real time. One of the exciting things that we do in this business is vendors and manufacturers have listening posts all over the world to look for threats and for trends. One of the advantages of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, is what I say is that we're at the right side of the timeline. So generally, when people around Japan are waking up and addressing problems for the day, we come in pretty much 24 hours later and have pretty much seen the lay of the land. So it is an advantage in terms of geographical location. However, real-time data monitoring is essential. And the volume of threats that we're seeing now, and as you'll learn today, we've got to bring in big guns. We've got to use AI. And so we've got an exciting demo for you as well. With that, Steve, I am anxious to hand this over to you. So here's Steve Stasiukonis.
Great. So a lot of people are asking, why is there so many threat actors, and why is there such an increase? So I had the privilege of having an opportunity to speak to some people that gave me a great insight, and one had to be Mike Pompeo about a year ago, and he was at a conference. But I asked a lot of questions on why we're seeing triple-digit growth in threat actors, and this is going to shed a lot of light. So with the geopolitical tensions we're seeing with the war with Ukraine, It's not just Russia. In fact, there is a plethora of bad guys out there. And the state-sponsored stuff is really kind of leading the pack. So if we look at what's happening here, Xi Jinping, president of China, Xi feels as if whatever's out there to take is okay. And that's the way their mindset is. And frankly, they have more advanced persistent threat groups, or we're going to call them APTs. So I define the acronym just to make sure I don't feel like I don't want to put money in that jar. So that's the goal behind China. And they've got more APTs you can shake a stick at. They've got groups like Hadnium that took down Microsoft. They've got Bronze Light Star. Bronze Light Star is another APT group that what they do is they use the same tools that my pen testers use. They're using Cobalt Strike. They're using all those different exploit tools and kits that we have to test security. They're leveraging it. So that's our first problem. And without question, they state sponsor stuff for threat actors. So that's our first big issue. The second big issue is this guy, Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un's got, 3 dynasties of nefarious activities. His grandfather, his father, now himself. They have been sequestered and sanctioned for so many years. The only way these guys know how to make money is through some sort of illicit trade or through criminal activity on the internet. And they're a big part of it. So, once again, if you're wondering who the big threat actors are that are out there that are sponsoring a lot of this, it comes down to China, North Korea, but there's other players that are in this market too. And the guys that are actually involved is this guy. This is Ibrahim Raisi. He's the, president of Iran. And they've got a wealth of APT threat actors that are out there. And once again, leveraging any sort of criminal activity, whether it's ransomware, redirection of funds, any sort of illicit behavior that they can, glean money from, they're going to do. But the 800-pound gorilla, this is the big problem we're experiencing, is this guy. And it's Putin. And Putin has once again crafted a problem for himself as well as everybody else. When this war started, it's been over a year now, with Putin's guys going out there and now just wreaking havoc. And the reason is, think about it, we've locked up trillions of dollars of Russian money that doesn't move from the West into his country. So he's out there just saying, drum up as much as you can and do whatever you want. And that's a huge part of today's problem. So the organized cyber criminals hide within these countries. They leverage those locations. They do what they can do to, once again, make money, and they're making money. And whoever said crime doesn't pay must have came up with that adage when the internet wasn't around, because crime pays large. And if you're a bad guy willing to live in a country that you can't pronounce, chances are you're probably doing rather well. So with that, if we go to our next slide here, I've got a little bit of delay here, the attack history. So in the past, and I've been doing this for 26 years, going on 27 years now, and I've always seen this, that large corporations were the ones that were concerned. And now we're seeing things change. The landscape's very changed. The calls I used to get were large organizations. Then we saw a time period, I saw companies getting breached around 2001 and 2002. Come, into the next decade, small and medium-sized businesses getting hit. Then COVID hit. When COVID hit, individuals, consumers that work from home were now becoming targeted because they were the pipe back to the business. And then if you start looking at things that are happening in the forums and blogs on the dark web, everybody's a target. The whole concept of saying that my business is too small, we're not on the radar, that doesn't work anymore. And in fact, you are a target, and everybody's a target, because the most sophisticated criminal is out there trolling the internet, leveraging any piece of intelligence. And there's guys that are pure access brokers. And if they find a vehicle that leads back to a company, hence a worker working from their house, that pipe goes back to a potential business. And if they can gain access and a foothold in there, they sell it. When they sell it, they get a hold of somebody's business or company, maintain that position, and then they figure out how to make money. Whether it's a ransom, whether it's going to be exfiltration of data that's going to be sold, or perhaps a redirection of funds like the stories that Ian had mentioned earlier. So today's world is a pretty scary place on the internet. Frankly, it's an interesting place to be when you're in my seat, because the calls are very interesting when they come in. You hear very interesting hacks that occur. So another thing about the threat actors, they have become incredibly sophisticated. But if you look at some of the things that these guys do, for example, this is a group called DarkSide. These are the ones that hack Colonial Pipe. And frankly, they reside within Russia. They are Russian. I know that for a fact. That's been publicized, and I think they've even said it themselves. But once they got the sanction of Putin, so Putin's threat actors are eyeing all businesses to hack, whether it was Colonial Pipe, JBS Meats, whether it was a small farm, whether it was any sort of business that has something that could be either sold or leveraged, they will take. So it's really unfortunate, but this is gaining popularity like you wouldn't believe. About 1.5 to 2 years ago, I was watching about 50 threat actor groups. These are APTs that are out there doing just what the guys at DarkSide do, whether it's Cloud by Society, there's a whole bunch of them. Now the list is probably well over 100. It just keeps gaining momentum. Threat actors have realized this makes money and it's very lucrative. So there's some other concerns we have out there and the industries that are out there. The victims of DarkSide, people would say, well, they were just hitting big companies like Colonial Pipe or the petroleum industry. That's not true. And in fact, the victims of DarkSide were anybody or anything. Didn't matter if you were a large company, a battery manufacturer, a law firm, if you were a cargo freight company, a logistics company. This is the actual vertical market of some of the companies that these guys hit. Guessed at DarkSide. You go to groups like Paiza, Plop. You can look at them all. They don't care. They'll have a moniker that says they'll never hit a nonprofit, a church, an orphanage, a hospital. Complete malarkey. It's total nonsense. You'll see nonprofits in there. You'll see institutions that have really not a lot of funds or resources, but the chances of getting a payout as a result of cyber insurance is what they're all after. So you know what? Hit them all. That's been the goal, and that's what they're leveraging. And it seems like they all follow that same mantra. Now, the capability. This is frightening because we're seeing this all over the dark web. Threat actors like us have tools. So I go to work, I got Microsoft Office, SharePoint, PowerPoint, Excel, Word. Threat actors, they've got tools as well. Now, the nation state guys and some of the organized guys, they're using the same tools my pen testers are, but when they need something special, they've got crimeware applications. And you can go to any dark market on the dark web, and there's a variety of different tools, and they are incredibly cheap or inexpensive. And this is actually off of Bohemia Market. This is something most recent, I think from like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was shopping on there, and I saw this one kit. The most expensive one was $312 in 1 cent USD, by the way, but you're going to pay with crypto. But if you don't have the chops to use that, there's crimeware as a service. So you go to a portal on the dark web, you can use all the resources they have. You type in an email address, you type in a name, probably not your real name, and then you put in all the instructions to ransom somebody. You're going to put in, the ransom note. You're going to tell them what the fee is going to be when they get hit. You're going to have the address of your wallet ID, the operating system. You want Linux, Macintosh, you want to have an Apple machine, whatever, Windows, it doesn't matter. And then the file type, a doc file, a spreadsheet, whatever you want. Order it now for the unbelievably low price of $300, actually euros. So you got to convert that. And if you don't have the skills to do this, nor do you want to, you just hire them. You can go to one of these sites out there, rent a hacker. This is a freelancing site. So if you want to serve as a life of crime or whatever and go after and help somebody take somebody down, and perhaps you're going to negotiate a percentage of the take or maybe a fee up front, those services are all over and they exist. So the threat actors are out there of advancing their capability. And to Philip's point, I guarantee you they're leveraging AI. And I'm sure there's a nation state that's out there that's perfecting it. And I'm sure they're going to hand it down to their bad guys and they're going to say, go. And that's the way that world's going to work. And if we don't have something that has the same capability, if we don't have something that's better, faster, smarter, we're going to be in trouble. And you guys are on this panel and you see this stuff every day. I'm going to tell you right now, I fear of what they have. I mean, I think there's probably some things that are out there that I know that are probably some stuff that's very nefarious and very deadly. And unfortunately, in the hands of the wrong people, it creates problems for us. So with that, let's see, we go to the next slide here. I'll let you go, Philip. Okay, I'm going to hand that back to you then, okay?
Awesome. Thank you very much. Steve, so, I was right. You do lead an exciting life. You've done this firsthand. You've been at the places where they're selling these tools. And ladies and gentlemen, you did see this right. $3.90 can buy you a tool that can get access to social media. And we can appear, not we, but the bad guys can appear as your friends, take control of your machines. Again, this is purely from facts and not, the objective is not to create fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So we're halfway through this, and to answer Mario's need, which is to share with you what should be the solution going forward. In the next section, we're going to talk about why, what, and how. And I position this for you because this sums up cybersecurity. We've all got these little pieces of the elephant and figure out, hey, this is cybersecurity. And the sooner there's awareness, and the sooner that organizational teams and leadership teams have this mindset of knowledge transferring from belief to actual action, the safer our organizations, our workplaces, and homes are going to be. And to that end, we want to again do a quick recap. We want to talk about facts, unified behavior, actually believing and acting out a cybersecurity posture, and to be definite. And a quick reminder that one of the basic tenets are to make sure that the right data is at the right place, at the right time, with the right person. Why cybersecurity? And Steve, I'm going to make this a little interactive for our panelists. Obviously, protect sensitive data. This group is well informed. I mean, no doubt, a lot of interaction with cyber insurance, and so GRC was one of the highest requests, right? And we're going to talk about this. We're going to flash a few badges and shields in a moment. Maintaining customer trust, boy, is that important, right? Creating a team that can work effectively. And so when your organizations are compliant and have a mature strategy, you are gaining your customers' trust. And of course, keeping Mario and company in business, make sure that you got your cyber insurance. So Steve, comments, please.
They're all important. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not taking this very seriously, if you ever get hit, it will be the worst business day of your career. Aside from losing a loved one, I've seen CEOs, CIOs, CFOs weep on calls, break down, and start really crying. And I also hear that, well, okay, so your business gets hit. No. The employees get hit as well, because when you can't get payroll out, there's people that need that check. They got to put food on the table, pay their mortgage, pay their rent. They've got bills to pay. Everybody gets hurt. So right now, it comes down to, looking at what you have and how you're going to protect it and take it seriously, and just don't do it once. That's the thing I see a lot of people do. Well, I'm just going to do this. I'll buy all these things. You can't do that. Philip, I know you see it as well. And,
and Steve, we couldn't script this back and forth better. So onto what do organizations need to do? So here you go. Please,
well,
Steve.
I got to take, you're the relationship with a security partner. Perfect. I will tell you, it is more important than ever. And I'm not saying this that as a business owner in the space. I think every company should have a relationship with somebody who's a security partner. If something goes down, you need an advocate. And it's not necessarily going to be just the insurance people, but you're going to need somebody after the aftermath of what just went down. So that's a really important thing. Somebody you can bounce ideas from, as well as in the event you need resources. Your IT people will be very stressed. So if something goes down, you're going to have them. The next one, test your network inside and out. I hear this all the time. Well, we're just going to test the external network and we're good. No, because you're not one big happy family. On the inside of your network, we see this all the time. It's one big flat environment. Everybody moves around, sees every folder, can do whatever they want within any segment. The goal is that on the inside, it's as tough as the outer core. And the reason is, if somebody gets in, you can't let them move around. And as you corner the guy and he sets something off, you catch him. And you got to fix it. All those things are important. People don't remediate. We see this all the time. They get a report and it's giving very detailed solutions to remediate, not just product services, just, roll your shirt sleeves up, fix your stuff. And the other thing is really important. I think this leverage of security technologies that are out there. There's a variety of stuff. This is the fastest growing space in the world of IT. And without question, there is a product that can meet everybody's budget, but you got to buy it and you got to leverage it. You have to install it properly. I see people write the check, put it in, but don't put it in right. Make sure a partner helps you with that to get it done properly. Not everybody has that skill set. You got to train your people. Don't just train them to do things right at work, make it relevant to them as human beings at home. You have a person that gets hit at home, they're not working. They're the most probably, they're at that point, their life is in such disarray, they're not productive. So make sure it's relevant to them at work and home. And if you can afford it, get cyber insurance for sure, because that's an important thing. I think in today's world, there's going to be either the people that have it or don't have it. And the ones that don't have it, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. So you've really got to make sure that you've done things right to get that policy written.
Thank you so much. And we're going to run through the next couple of slides, only because we're ready for Paul and his demonstration. So GRC, a lot of you asked about GRC. It's out there. The world is not perfect, but a lot easier than it was 10 years ago. These organizations, whether it's NIST, providing the zero trust architecture, a cyber guide work, again, we are going to share these links with you where there are tools and models and templates to actually implement a solid cybersecurity posture for your organizations. And some of these links will actually spell out, ladies and gentlemen, a step-by-step for your leadership teams to take and work with your IT teams to actually implement in your organizations. Steve, 15 seconds.
I think any one of these are worth looking at. If you haven't adapted something, you should. And frankly, you know what, NIST, for example, great. It gives you an understanding of risks, what you have to do to fix it, and then once again, continue the process. So big fan. Any one of these, NIST is my favorite.
Thank you. So here is what the checklist looks like. Like, what do? We've walked through a session. We've understood the landscape. We've understood the model. We understand reality. We know our ecosystem. What do we do? In our organizations, we're looking, number one, for a culture of cybersecurity. You've got to live this every day. You've heard the stories. We've done some great things. We've dropped USB keys around organizations and schools and colleges and headquarters of institutions. And on average, about 80% of these USBs get picked up and plugged in. This is not old news. This is as recent as a few weeks or months ago, and I'm sure Steve can share equal stories. And basic things like password managers and storing your passwords, and MFA, which is multi-factor authentication. Get those codes on your phone, ensure that your organizations have single sign-on, constantly update your software, do your risk assessments. Yes, think before you click. This is human nature. We talk about this often. This is what keeps the bad guys in business. There is someone, in the accounting team that's going to click on their favorite cookie recipe 1 week before Thanksgiving, and that the bad guys know this and create malware specifically for that. Keep training your employees. Awareness, and backup. So on the right are a few tools that you can use today. Organizations and companies like Okta, Defend, the company that we all are part of, and that you will see a demo of in a minute. LastPass is a great password manager, one of many. We are not sponsored by or not being paid in any way, but we're just giving you some of the popular tools out there. And KnowBe4 is a great tool for employee training. Steve, any comments?
They're all good tools. And you know what? They're all reasonable. And frankly, all the things that you have there are really the things you need to do to kind of like set that baseline for your security posture. But it's like I said it before, it's a never-ending process.
Thank you.
We do things and change things. Got to get more.
Alvin, a quick poll as we transition over and Paul gets ready. So this one, is the one to see, in terms of the tools and what currently, how informed do you think your employees are in your organizations? And with that, Paul, I'm going to transition control over to you. So ladies and gentlemen, here's what you have at the moment, which is an actual demo, and it's got an element of artificial intelligence and machine learning in here. So it will be exciting, I assure you. There it is. So quick answer to the polls again, 50% on average. So most of us believe that our employees are informed, which is actually a good thing. Most of the organizations that were called in is a little too late, and they're at the bottom end of the stack. So it's good to know that 54% of us consider ourselves well informed. 17% below average, and this is high. 30% are well informed in your organization, so we will rest a little easier today, won't we, Steve?
Yeah, that's actually a good number.
Yep, thank you. Paul, over to you.
Alrighty. So there's a whole bunch of acronyms on here which I will call out before I have to put some money in the pot as well. So this is a big move to cloud. Arguably, the whole work from home, COVID response to those kinds of challenges couldn't have happened without the cloud being present. And the great thing about cloud is that it's accessible by people from anywhere at any time. That's also the big weakness of cloud, of course, is that this stuff is accessible by anyone from anywhere at any time. And there's a lot of moves around in the industry in general to move towards a technique called zero trust in their environments. And zero trust used to be called defense in depth. And really, it's just about layering different tools, different approaches to try and reduce risk in your environment. And it says zero trust, but actually it's not. You can't have zero trust. There's always trust in the environment. It's around reducing trust, around moving away from that sort of traditional perimeter model where you have firewalls and VPNs and all these really strong things on the outside of your environment. And once they're inside, they're free to roam and do what they want. And as Steve spoke to, that needs to stop. Right, you've got to start to lock things down, to let people only have access to things that they should have access to. And so at Plurilock, we really focus on the two things that are really at the heart of what you care about as an organization. You care about your data and you care about your user identities, right? Those are the two key pieces of things that you have. So to do this, we have a couple of different tools that can help you address these particular aspects of it. The first one is around securing external access to your cloud applications. And that's using things like single sign-on, or SSO as it's commonly called, and conditional access. So single sign-on really restricts the ability to people to be able to log in, right? You can start to say, who can try and log into my applications? Where can they log in from? Things like that. You then need to look at securing internal data. So data once you've got it in the cloud. So you've got your Office 365, you've got your Google Workspaces, etc. How do you keep control of that data now it's out in that cloud environment? So what you need for that is data loss prevention, DLP, or data leakage prevention, if you prefer. They're fairly interchangeable terms. And that's just around giving you control of your data back again. And then the last piece of the puzzle is how do you start to secure identities? Right, you let people come in and access data and do things in your systems based on the fact that they've presented some kind of credential. They've been through some kind of multi-factor authentication typically as well. But you're only checking them at the door. And once they're in that door, anything that user can do, they can go off and do. And you really have no idea if it's actually them they're doing it. So these are some of the challenges that we try to fix here. Next slide, please, Mel. Perfect. Already. So this tool here, AI Cloud and AI Cloud DLP, this is the first two aspects. So this is securing the perimeter, and this is helping you get control back over your data. So securing the perimeter it's single sign-on. And what single sign-on does is it allows you to hide all of your various cloud applications behind a single identity. So what you often find now is that you start to get all these different cloud tools from all over the place, and they all have their own logins. Right, so you've got all these different identities out there in the cloud. And the problem for users is they can't remember lots of these things. So they start to do bad things like reuse passwords across multiple sites. Huge security fail, right? You have some third-party application, they get their user database stolen, they have access to everyone's passwords. They're going to go around and try those passwords on all of the common cloud suites and say, hey, can I log in? So users are a big problem when it comes to these identity things. So you need to be able to hide these things behind a single login so that users can have one really secure password that then reaches out to all of these different systems. And that means that you can control those. You can set your own policies around password complexity. You can set your own policies around reuse, depending on which set of compliances you need to meet. So you can get control over those identities back. It means that you can do things like provision and, more importantly, deprovision applications. right? There's a huge problem out there when people leave an organization and they have these sort of ghost identities out there in cloud systems now. I saw a thing on LinkedIn the other day where huge numbers of users have still got access to applications from their previous companies for up to 2 years after they left that company. It's just insane. So you can start to sort of control that life cycle piece. And that's the single sign-on. You've probably used a single sign-on solution, whether you know it or not, right? You log in, you're presented with a suite of applications you have access to. So the other part then is access control, right? How can users get in? So you need to start being able to restrict users getting into your systems based on things like what IP address network they come from, right? What network they're coming from, by which browsers they're trying to use, by where in the world they're trying to access from, or at what time of day are they trying to access. Right. If you're in New York City, you don't expect to see someone in Indonesia logging into your systems at 3 o'clock in the morning. Right. So how do you restrict those kinds of things? And you can add multi-factor authentication and things like that on top as well. And then around DLP is, like I say, it's you getting control of data in the cloud. So you can start to restrict what people can do with your data. And primarily that falls into 2 different stacks. So the first one is email. Right, there's a huge amount of data breaches happens via email, and they're not necessarily done in a nefarious way, right? People accidentally emailing a spreadsheet out that contains a whole bunch of client data in it, those kinds of things. So how do you control that? So email DLP allows you to track what's happening in your email world. Right, so you can restrict users being able to send certain types of documents. You can restrict users being able to email things to, private personal Gmail accounts or something like that. You can look for compliance failures in keywords. So people sending out health information, health numbers, PHNs, those kinds of things, or credit card information. Right, so you can actually look at these outgoing emails and say, no, we don't want to release this kind of information out there. And then within the cloud applications themselves, think Office 365, think Google Workspaces. How do you stop people doing stuff with that data? Right, it's there. It's easy to get to. So you need to be able to stop users, for example, printing or copying and pasting between documents or deleting a document. Right, they're a disgruntled employee. They're about to leave. They think, hey, this will be fun. I'll go and delete everything out of the cloud. How do you stop people accidentally sharing data in the organization? Right, you want your payroll team. You want to make sure they don't accidentally send out the entire payroll for the company. So these kinds of things, right? How do you get control over this data? So that's one piece of it. It's good stuff. We could spend hours just talking about that. Could you flick to the next slide for me, please? Perfect. And then this is a really interesting thing. So this tool here sits post login. So once you've logged in, like I said earlier, you never really check whether it's the user anymore. And the problem you have there is that all of those contextual signals are really easy to fake, right? You can go and buy MFA exploits off the shelf. You can pretend to be appearing from any location you want to be from. So how do you know that the person that's inside your network doing things is actually who you think they are? Think remote work, right? Classic example, I'm here in my home office. People have physical access to my machine. My kids could be on my machine. The contractors that are seemingly always in and out of my my house at the moment could have access to my machine, right? So you've got all of these people that can get in and appear as me. How do you stop that? So we have this technology called Defend, and what it does is it measures the way that you work. So when you type, when you move your mouse, the way that you do that is very unique to you. So the speed and cadence of your typing, how long you hold keys down for and move between sets of keys and things like that. How do you move the pointer, speed and direction of travel, and how do you accelerate and so on. We can use all these different signals to build a picture of you, the user, doing your work. We don't care what you're doing. We're not looking at things that you're clicking on or documents that you open or stuff like that. It's just how do you do it? And then on a moment-by-moment basis, we can measure the current behavior for that user and compare it to that profile that we've built for that user and answer the fundamental question of security, which is it really you? Okay. I think we've got about 2 minutes for a demo, so I'll do a super abridged version. So let me go ahead and share my screen here.
Thank you, Paul. And I apologize, we didn't give you enough time for your demo, but ladies and gentlemen, if you can indulge us for a couple of minutes as Paul is setting up. We will have one last poll on the value of this presentation, and your questions that we've received in Q&A, please keep them coming. We will be responding to you directly because we've got your email addresses, and so part of our technical team will respond to you. Paul, back to you.
Alrighty. Hopefully I've shared the right screen and you can see it. Awesome. Alrighty.
This is your grocery list, right?
This is my grocery list. Yeah, or who knows? It's me doing work apparently. So this is really down in the weeds. This is the moment by moment authentication of me typing on my workstation before our webinar started. So about a minute before we started, I was chatting to someone on Slack. I'm way out on east of the East Coast. And every time I'm typing something, when I'm performing mouse actions, we're measuring that behavior and we're comparing it to what it expects to see from me. And you can see here that we have this identity score. This goes from 0 to 1. So the few keystrokes that I was typing into Slack was a 99% match. And that's pretty typical, 100% match, 95% match, and so on. So as I'm working, we're measuring how I'm working. How do I physically touch that workstation? Right? It's a biometric signal. It's based on my physiology. And we're saying, this is me. In the interest of time, I'll show you what happens when it doesn't think it's me. So I've got a little email here, and I'm just going to type with 2 fingers, which is not how I typically type here. And as I type, we will look at the way that I'm typing here and compare it to my normal profile. And we'll start to see a deviation in my behavior. So as I type, we're starting to take a look at this and say something looks a little bit odd here. But because everything in the past looked normal, right, it's going to say, hey, low risk. And you'll see there, we've just had a low risk event pop up on the screen. So it's seen just in those few words, that doesn't look like me, but it was me before that, right? Perhaps I'm turning around to talk to my kids while they're coming in during a demo again. Perhaps I'm typing with one hand while I'm drinking a cup of coffee. But as we continue, we're going to start to see this risk escalate. And then when we get to the point where we say, hey, that's enough now, this doesn't look like Paul anymore, then we can start to take action.
It's now moving up to medium risk, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
And there it is. You got your red.
Paul, you're a really fast 2-finger typer.
Lots of
There
practice.
he
Okay,
is.
so my screen has just gone black. So I've just been locked out of my workstation. Normally I would log straight back in with my face, but I'm using it on the camera here for the webinar. So let me just put my password back in there. Cool. Alrighty. So we've just gone there from everything looking normal to, hey, this doesn't look like Paul, let's get rid of him, in the space of less than 2 sentences. So if we take a look over here, we can see that the measurements of my scores are very, very different to how I normally behave. Now, what's interesting here is that there's nothing that you could guess about that based on looking at the signals. Right? I'm coming in from a location that I'm normally coming in from. I'm using a machine that I always use. I'm running applications that I normally use. The only thing that's different, the only thing that we can say, hey, this is or isn't Paul, is my biometrics, right? I'm not typing like Paul normally types. So in the absence of any other signal, any other indication that I'm a bad actor, we've been able to detect the fact that the person behind that credential, the person actually operating that session, is not who they claim to be. And that really is the key, it's a key piece of security, right? Is it really the user? So that's my very brief demo. Always happy to give a slightly more in-depth look at it for folks that are interested. But back to you, Philip.
Awesome. Paul, again, I apologize for the rush. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'd rather be here than get back to work. However, we promised an hour, and it has been hopefully a fun-filled hour. There is a quick Q&A for you to tell us how we did. This will help us as we continue the educational journey to do better and to be more informational. If you'd like more of these sessions, please let us know or let Mario know. And we thank everyone for being here today. Appreciate it. And you will get a link to the recorded demo, to our panelists, to Steve, to Mario, to Ian, who had to rush off, and to Paul. Thank you very much for a job well done. And we hope to see you again and keep this world safe. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.